The scene is set.
Eucalyptus.
Invasive albino king snakes.
Emerald ash borer and its parasitoids.
The world's largest amphibians.
The invasive species that is humans. I'm Kirsten.
And I'm Nicholas. Welcome to the Anthropo Scene.
The scene is set. You walk outside in the early morning to check on your garden. The morning dew glistens on the flowers and creates a diamond-studded carpet on the grass in front of you. You breathe deeply. The smell of fresh rain. As you walk towards your flower beds, a light buzzing fills your ears, and you see a small army of insects drifting from flower to flower, collecting nectar and pollen, all while importantly pollinating each flower they visit. However, these adorable, fuzzy, charismatic friends have a dark secret and a complicated story to tell. Hello, my beautiful nerds. How are you?
Oh, yeah, and hello from me as well. I'm also here.
Nicholas, how are you?
I'm... Whoa, you know how I'm doing.
Let's be honest with our friends, with our fans, our friends and our fans.
It's Friday, and I'm having a bad day. It feels like a Monday.
That's fair. We were having technical difficulties, but we got it off the ground, and we're getting started. And I bet you're going to feel better right away.
Yeah, actually, because I'm excited, because obviously we must be talking about invasive honeybees.
There we go. Exactly. And you literally posted about this today.
I was thinking that when you were doing the intro. Oh, yeah. By the way, for everyone listening, I forgot what this episode was supposed to be about because we had talked about it a few weeks ago. I found out as soon as you guys did.
Yes, a quick apology to everyone who's been waiting for another episode. I just got back to Ecuador a bit and my life was chaos, but we're settling in. And I have my mic back, so my audio isn't crap quality. So excited to be here. Hopefully. All right. So yes, today our invasive little friends are honeybees. And I had here already, wait, what? Yes, honeybees. So the Western honeybee or European honeybee, which is Apis mellifera, Apis mellifera, right? Okay. is the bee we all know and love. Or do we? Right? So I'm going to get us started by taking a page from Nicholas's etymology book for our entomology subject of today. And the genus name Apis is Latin for bee, which is pretty straightforward. And mellifera is honey-bearing, which is also pretty straightforward. So this is probably one of the easiest.
Honey-bearing bee.
Yes, exactly.
God, etymology is so hard.
Right. I think this one is probably one of the easiest ones to remember. So this is a neat subject, and whenever I kind of have brought it up to people, they seem to be pretty surprised. So I'm excited to chat about it today. I've seen a few blogs about this subject and more awareness, but I think it's something really interesting to talk about. And I'm going to do the normal science breakdown like we usually do, but there's also I want to dip our toes into a focus on conservation, outreach, a little bit of maybe misguided conservation, and, well, bad marketing, essentially. So it's going to be interesting.
No, I've got so much irritating things about this subject,
So I'm going to put you either in a better mood because you get to talk about it, or in a worse mood because you'll be irritated.
It'll put me in a different angry mood.
Are you always this articulate?
It'll put me in like I want to do something and get something, like a productively angry mood versus a I don't want to do anything angry mood, which I'm currently in.
Fair. So seems all right. Let's get started. So where is the European honeybee from? Any guesses, Nicholas?
Oh, I got one. My hand is raised so high right now.
Okay, Nicholas, you.
I'm gonna just, using my vast, wrinkly brain of knowledge, I'm going to guess that it's from... Are we going for continent? Because I got to guess.
Yeah.
Antarctica.
Okay, that is actually literally the only place where it is not.
Right,
So.
Isn't it opposite day?
Yes. Oh, it's opposite day today. Oh my god, I missed that. Anyway. Oh, but also the honeybee is invasive. This isn't a joke. Just clearing that up. So yeah, the honeybee came from Europe. It was so long ago that I'm not really sure if we know exactly its pure native range. But surprise, surprise, it's declining in Europe and having some troubles over there. Like we on repeat keep talking about how our invasive species generally aren't doing well in their home range.
Ironically,
yeah, it keeps coming up again and again. So I'm not going to dive way too much into like honeybee life cycles because I think they're pretty well known overall. They're social insects. They make and store honey. They get down and groovy to communicate with each other. They have a badass bitch queen, and there's information about them everywhere. So if you're interested in bees, just check it out because everybody loves honeybees and the information's everywhere. Oh, something I did learn that was new when I was reading the Weber 2012 paper that's in the resources is social bees probably actually evolved from wasps and not the other way around. So that's cool. Yeah, it was saying some of the theory was, wasps mostly feed on meats and that kind of stuff. And then as angiosperms were more, as there were more angiosperms, it was more like lucrative to eat nectar and store honey instead.
Right. I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense too, right? Because social animals would probably have to evolve. It's not like you just evolve a social animal first.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you're like social to like hunt, right? Or to swarm and to eat meat. And then afterwards you're like...
It's like more beneficial, but starting out, it's like a chicken before the egg thing. Like you have to have something to lay an egg.
Right.
You can't just have an egg first.
Yeah. Speculation.
Unrelated though, the egg did come before the chicken, but for all intents and purposes of this argument right now, it's a wasp before bee.
Everybody. That question is no longer as exciting as you thought it was. Sorry, fam.
It's like super easy too.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's just an expression though.
Yeah, well, yeah, most things are. And then scientists take everything that's like supposed to be like an expression of symbolism and stuff like that. And they're like, well, technically, because we're boring.
Exactly. Yes. So the chicken or the egg came before the chicken and the wasp came before the bee. And let's get into why honeybees suck. I love bees, don't get me wrong. And I also even love honeybees. But these little guys are stealing the spotlight from so many other cool bees. There are 20,000 species of bees. And what does everybody know? The honeybee. So they are just they're just taking up too much of the attention. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into more of why it's wrong. Actually, there was a quote. There's a really cool blog that I've put in the show notes from a Scientific America blog by Daniel Rubinoff. And I just want to quote exactly. He said, "Indeed, the honeybee is arguably humanity's favorite insect." What do you think, Nicholas?
That's wrong.
Okay, what is everybody's favorite insect? Not people that are entomologists or like spiders.
Okay, I'm going like flagship species here. It's probably like the monarch butterfly or butterflies in general. Like I feel like that's more universally loved. People are like afraid of bees. You know what I mean? Like
right.
Most
okay.
People, oh my god, a bee, kill it. You know, like even if it's not like a wasp, like they're like, I must kill this because it will harm me because they're ignorant.
What if I say the honeybee is the hipster's favorite insect?
Yeah, because it's like people who like know or have some level of knowledge, but not enough knowledge to be accurate in their opinions, which is most of the world.
Right.
I'm cynical today, so.
Okay. All right. We're getting cynical, Nicholas, and excited, Kirsten, because I'm having a great day today, and I'm so sorry.
Cynicalist.
All right. So, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna expound upon that rant a little bit, but like, so it's not just me being irritated, but like because, and I don't want to take away from what you're probably already going to talk about, but just to like give my side of it, like what I see in a lot of like culture and stuff like that is people do because nature is becoming more prevalent in pop culture and stuff like that, but not like enough to bring enough knowledge. People have like the bare minimum of knowledge. Like they are now aware that bees are important pollinators and stuff like that. However, that's basically where their knowledge stopped. They don't know that there's, thousands of species of bees, and the one that they consider to be like the most common and like good because it makes honey for us is the honeybee. So they don't understand that that's invasive, which is dumb too because like it's in the name. I mean, like we're away. Like people regularly say, "Oh yeah, European honeybees." Are those native here? I've had people ask me that.
Right. But in people's defense, which I will expand on later, they have been here since 1622.
How is that in people's defense? We've had hundreds of years to learn that they're wrong then.
Okay. I just mean that it's like something that has almost become like naturalized. You know how we kind of talked a little bit about the eucalyptus in the eucalyptus episode, how people in California loved the eucalyptus because it had been there so long. I'm just saying.
No, I understand. I mean, it's just like a lack of knowledge. It's like people just don't have that level of like forethought or critical thinking to like be like, oh, the European honeybee. I guess that does make sense. Like they just don't need to do that, so they don't.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and this is why we're here. This is why we're doing this. We're spreading the knowledge. And if you didn't know, I know Nicholas is a little mad, but just come along for the ride and learn some more now. And then you'll
I'm not mad at you. Everybody listening is like, oh my God, he hates me. No. I hate everyone else who doesn't listen to this podcast.
Okay. So where is it listed as invasive? As we said before, it's present everywhere except Antarctica. And the main issues are in the Americas, in North and South America for sure. But it's weird because it's one of those things where you go do research on it. And because it's not, it's like this really important agricultural animal and stuff, like people don't really study it that much as an invasive. Like it's getting there. But so yeah, it's not really coming up in the literature too much. I'm thinking again with the eucalyptus episode where everything that was coming up was a pest or a problem with keeping the eucalyptus around, right? And same with the honeybee. But there is the Brazilian or Africanized honeybee or killer bee is a subspecies of honeybee. So it's Apis mellifera because they're super aggressive little buggers and they don't hoard honey and they just move around and mess a bunch of stuff up. So people do care about that one. So anyway, I did put some stuff about that in the show notes if you're curious, but that is not our focus today. So back to the Americas and our European honeybee. Why is it such a good invasive? So they are super adaptable. They are really good at moving into new areas. They can synchronize their life cycles with what is available when. So for example, if they're in a region where there is tons of flowers all the time, they're good to just keep reproducing. But in the north, they're good at coming out of their hives in the spring when the flowers are there, and then they can overwinter, and they overwinter really well as well. They build up these little balls and they keep warm, and then they come out in the spring. So that means they can also be in cold areas, and they can migrate locally. There's these like swarms of migrating bees, which I think is mostly the Africanized honeybee. They optimize their foraging like perfectly in the desert so that they can survive on very little resources. And then this is kind of the big one. They are not picky about what they forage from. So this is really different compared to a bunch of like American native bees that are more tightly linked usually to specific species, right? They're symbiotic. So this bee has maybe 2 or 3 kind of species of flowers that it pollinates, or maybe even only one, and that it collects from. But honeybees don't care. So.
Right. So they're not like hyper specific like most species of bees, which would then have the negative impact of occupying multiple niches for multiple different species versus like the different species that have evolved together and therefore don't have that same niche competition.
Exactly. Like if honeybees came over and they were invasive, but they could only like collect and pollinate from 1 or 2 species of angiosperm, like flowering trees and plants and stuff, then they wouldn't be such a big problem. But they can take it from anywhere, so they're not picky.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a big one. Mm-hmm.
I heard I was kind of quiet there for a little bit because I was wondering if you describing honeybees, especially the Africanized bees, if they're Latin, they would make sense to me because you said it was like Scutellata, right?
That was the other one, but we're just kind of focusing on the broad, like the one that we use for livestock.
Right. I was just
Yeah.
curious because like
Mhm.
Scutellata, I'm thinking like scutes, like the like on a turtle shell, which means like shields. And I was wondering
Oh.
like what purpose in the name that was, but
That one must be, I mean, they're really aggressive, so maybe they're like little warriors.
right.
Yeah,
But I mean that would be more like a sword, right?
I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just curious.
Maybe
if there
it's
was
like
a
their
thing.
swarming, their swarming behavior. They kind of form like a little bit of like a
Yeah,
shield.
that could totally be it.
Yeah, that could be it. Yeah. Okay.
Let us
So,
know in the comments.
yeah, if anybody knows, please help us out. That would be great. So we know that they're in the Americas. We know why they're good at being invasive. And then what are the issues? And this is a big one. And we got a bunch of stuff to touch on. So buckle up, grab some popcorn. So we love bees because they're important livestock, right? And yes, livestock. That sounds weird, but honeybees are livestock. We bring them in to a farm and have hives around to help pollinate flowers. So under a bunch of jurisdictions and stuff, they're considered livestock. So this is why it's like really weird that they're a conservation icon, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're worth like $3 billion in the USA alone, but that is just for the actual services that they give to our agriculture. So that is kind of weird.
It's like having like a cow as the flagship species for conservation.
Pretty much. Yeah, actually, because we brought honeybees over for farming. So yeah, it would be like WWF with a cow instead of a panda.
I would not go to that website.
As the main logo. Actually, spoiler alert, WWF is part of the problem. They've actually put the honeybee as like this like conservation icon, which in Europe, okay, but it confuses people. So
Right, exactly, yeah.
we're calling you out, WWF.
You mean other parts of the world aren't America?
No, I know.
You're lying to me.
There is more out there, but
I don't believe I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it. Oh, I'm sorry. Nicholas.
Everything is America.
Everything is America. Alrighty. On that note, so both managed bees and feral escaped bees can cause problems in the ecosystem. They directly compete with bees for resources in space. This is one of the big ones. And like we were saying, because they can collect pollen and nectar from a ton of different species, they can compete with pretty much any other pollinators that are there. And then the other fun one, which is like a dual problem, is they actually help to propagate other invasive plants that native bees probably wouldn't actually harvest from and pollinate.
Son of a bitch. God damn it.
Exactly. Exactly.
That one irritates me. Maybe I will get angry.
So, I mean, native bees usually have these like tight relationships and they won't even touch an invasive flower. And then you come along and you have these invasive bees that are further propagating the invasive plants that are around that no one else would touch. So it's just like together they form a big old dumpster fire. That's great.
AKA America. Sorry.
America is a dumpster fire. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. Nobody's going to deny that.
I love you, American listeners. Please don't unsubscribe. We lose all our listeners from this episode. Anyway.
Hey, we got 10 countries. We got 9 other countries to choose from.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
I didn't even know there were 10 countries.
Okay, Nicholas, you're not helping.
American education system.
All right. Okay, so honeybees propagate fake news. No, I'm just kidding. They propagate other invasive plants, and then they also have a potential to spread pathogens, and especially because a ton of native bees are actually live solitary or in very small groups, and then you have these big colonies of honeybees that are more likely to have pathogens just because it's, hey, bigger number, bigger chance of getting sick and spreading that, right? And they also bring invasive pathogens, which can sometimes adapt to attack native bees as well. So that is an issue. And that is for both feral escaped bees and honeybees in groups. So that is, yeah. So we have we have these direct competition, then we have apparent competition, where they bring in extra pathogens, right, that can therefore spread out and then attack other things. And then just also to the issue with the conservation. Now, there seems to be a little bit of some mixed results where you see some people not reporting too much impact of honeybees on native bees. But in general, if bees were outside of their were outside of their native range, they were causing some kind of negative impact on some kind of negative impact on the native bees. So I have a couple. I have Hudwins and Klein, 2013, which was talking about this issue in the paper. And then there was a review by Mallinger et al., which was really good. And they had a little bit of back and forth, but they were looking at managed and unmanaged bees in both their native and non-native range. So when they were saying the results were mixed, that was because they mixed native and non-native ranges. But essentially, when it came to things outside of their native range, they were doing bad things.
Backtrack a little bit there. What do you mean managed? So you're looking at the managed.
Sorry. Managed bees are the ones that we're farming and that we have like little colonies for our purposes, and unmanaged are like feral escaped bees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
that
you
makes
for
more
checking
sense.
me on
So
that. Yeah.
Same species, just the ones that are intentionally being managed, and then the other ones that are just like establishing their own colonies, but are the same European honeybee.
Yes, thank you for checking me on that. That is much better to have.
No, I just needed to catch up. My brain
Yeah.
is like a little bit slow today.
No, I think I definitely should have clarified that. So yeah, so if you have bees that are livestock and then your feral bees, which I thought was just like a really funny thing to say, like feral bees, because it sounds weird.
They're just foaming at the proboscis.
Yeah, exactly. If they're outside of their native range, they are doing bad things. And then something else that I found that was pretty interesting is our issue is because we're focusing so much on honeybees and what's causing problems with them. You know, Thomas and Hunt in 1999 said, unlike honeybees, like the death of bumblebees and other native bees due to pesticides are not really reported, and no one's really keeping track of them and doing these surveys, and we're not really understanding properly how our native bees are doing because all the focus is on the big money agricultural ones, which I'll get back to in a little bit. Spoiler alert, native bees can and will pollinate just as well as managed bees.
Ha!
Yes, so I'll get back to that in a little bit.
Take that, communism. No, that's not right.
Wait. I mean, social insects, communism.
I meant capitalism.
Capitalism. Oh, I guess. Okay. I thought you meant like the solitary bees were saying, take that, communism.
No. Well, sure. Yeah, that works too. Let's make that pun is significantly more intelligent and funny. That's what I was intending.
Right. But also, I mean, there are native bees, like for example, in Ontario, Canada, like Bombus impatiens are they're social native bees. But anyway, yes, take that, communism. Okay. So then the big one with the big issue, which is what I wanted to dive into a little bit more, aside from like the research and what we've seen and what we haven't, is the kind of, I've just been calling it like misguided conservation, right? Because I love that people want to protect bees, right? I think that's great that people are getting excited and they're trying to plant native flowers and that kind of stuff. But just the fact that they don't really realize the difference, like we said before, where people are like, yeah, save the honeybee. And you're like, actually, no, save the other bees. So I think this is like the biggest issue and the problem with where the money's going and what people are doing. And also there's a ton of people now doing like hobby beekeeping. And of course, what do they have?
Yeah, they have European honeybees. I mean, like, that's a big thing, too. And they're, like, super serious about it. I mean, if you've ever met, like, a serious beekeeper, like, they're super passionate about what they're doing and, like, are, like, you know, unfortunately misguided in the fact they're like, oh, yeah, I'm helping pollinate, not understanding, like, the actual extent of what they're doing. Not to be a buzzkill.
God, that was lame.
There it is. No, see, like I know, for example, my grandpa has had hives of bees, and they were European honeybees in the Yukon, but he was collecting and selling the honey, so he was using them as livestock. So this is where it starts to get kind of fuzzy, where we're like talking about, properly managing bees as livestock and keeping them the best you can in the area, and then harvesting the honey and eating that. That's a different thing, right?
Right,
So
right.
This is where it gets like not so black and yellow. There we go. I always say gray. I had to switch it up. Yeah. So
black and gray.
Oh no, I always say gray, like as in not black and white.
Yeah, it's not so black and gray. I was like, what?
Yeah, so this is the big one, and I mean we've talked about it a little bit, but I just want people to really know. I mean, tell your friends, honeybees are not the only bees, and just make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, aren't honeybees the only bees that produce honey?
Pretty much. So, I mean, this is again where some honeybees will probably have to be they'll have to be managed, right? And kept. It's just about making sure we are really careful about feral bee populations and doing more research on kind of the range of hives and how far bees will go. And then so not having, say you have this canola field, right? And really making sure you optimize if you only need 2 hives of bees to pollinate and then also get the honey, that you only have 2 and you're not having 5 and then they're spilling out and causing more impacts. So I think this is more the big thing. Yeah, because I love honey. I use honey all the time. I use it instead of sugar. Maybe I should slow down on using it because of this, but it's a hard one.
I mean, like I have 2 points. One I might have already forgotten, but the other one is like honeybees too is like if you're vegan or whatever, like there's a lot of movement like you don't eat honey because like basically like a lot of the practices that are used in like large scale honey farming are like pretty, as far as a lot of people are considered pretty non-humane to the bees. And like we're not going to get into like a whole vegan rant right here or anything like that, but basically what I'm saying is like if like people are starting to adopt more of these like animal conscious, consumer type things where a lot of people look for like responsibly sourced honey and stuff like that, like that's a pretty big one.
Yeah,
because it seems like those beekeepers are more like they care about their bees and things like that. So if you're going to like consume honey, that's probably a better way to go than these large scale farms because 1, it's just a lower impact. And 2, it's probably more humane for the bees if that's something that you're passionate about. But my other thing was honeybees too. And there's not a lot of research on this that I would know of or that I've read personally, I guess. That doesn't mean there isn't a lot of research, but as like supplemental introductions for areas where like pollinators are in like severe decline. I'm wondering if like, are honeybees going to be better than nothing? In Northern Illinois, we have over 500 species of native bee, none of which are doing like that fantastic. Like the most common species are obviously doing great, or not great, but they're doing okay. But I would say that all of the species are in decline. So is it that they are being more affected by honeybees presence and that addition of the honeybees is actually going to occupy the niche and make their decline more drastic? Or is there a lot more available niche because of all the pesticide usage and stuff like that, that the honeybees aren't necessarily competing with the native bees? And it's, if we were to have less honeybees, would we then be harming the floristic ecosystems? Right. This is all like hypothetical. I'm just posing questions.
Yeah.
I don't know
the Mellinger et al. Paper did actually mention positive impacts on conservation from managed honeybees or for managed bees just in general, because in general they could spill out and pollinate areas that were low on honeybees low on native bees. Sorry.
Right. And that gets into that super, gray area that we were talking about where it's just like, well, they are kind of benefiting, but it's not like it's kind that's almost like a scapegoat for us to say like, oh yeah, no, it's okay to continue doing what we're doing because we've screwed up so bad in so many other ways that this screw up is somehow making our other screw up slightly less bad.
Right. Yeah, so it's one of those, it's like, is it better than nothing? Which we've talked about a couple times here, like with reforestation with eucalyptus and with, erosion and kudzu, which not so much. But, like sometimes there's what can we do? And I mean, ideally, in an ideal, beautiful world, we're just going to try to restore our native bee populations properly so that they can do it. Because we have Winfrey et al. 2007 in the resources did find that native bees can and will provide enough pollination to ensure against loss of honeybees, because we're definitely studying a lot right now, loss of honeybees, because we are seeing, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of like the colony collapse that is going on across a bunch of the Americas, where honeybees are just dying in like droves.
CCD, right?
Yeah, colony collapse disorder.
And that's from the neonicotinoid herbicides and stuff like that. Or that's one of the multiple things that are affecting it, right?
Yeah, so there's herbicides, there's pesticides. Some people think in some places that the pesticides they've been using on like the pests of bees, so like little mites and stuff, were actually harmful to the bees themselves. Or that it just caused these like super mites that were resistant to pesticides, and it's causing the colony collapse. So there's a couple different things. And then this is kind of jumping ahead a little bit in what I had planned, but this is good. Because at the end of the day, what do we have when we have all these colonies across all of our farmlands of honeybees? We have a monoculture, essentially, of pollinators.
Oh, God, sure do love that word.
Right. So usually in an ecosystem, you're going to have solitary bees, you're going to have butterflies, you'll have some bats, some other birds that are important pollinators, hummingbirds and stuff. And so you get this diversity. And if one group is affected, then it's not so bad. But then you get this huge wipeout of honeybees, and then what? But it's because it's all we have. So it spreads easier. And this can be seen in forestry practices, in issues with crops, in like potato blight, like, all the way back to the Irish famine. Like when we grow a whole bunch of one thing or host a whole bunch of one thing in livestock and or crops, you get this issue.
Oh, we screwed it up big time.
Essentially, yes. So I think the solution here is, if I were to be a farmer and I have my plot of land, I can have my my hive of honeybees, and then I need to see what else I can do around my land and around those areas to help also to give a better chance to the native bees as well. And so how can you set up, your forest beside to have more different various pollinators to have the biodiversity that protects against disaster? So yeah, biodiversity protects against disaster, and just a more biodiverse ecosystem is usually a more functional one in general. So I kind of jumped over the like why and how it was introduced here in case anybody was wondering. And it's pretty short and sweet. Like we brought it here in 1622 to help pollinate our crops. And I found this like really kind of neat, funny, weird little anecdote from like Thomas Jefferson, which is what he was talking about. I'm going to put Native Americans because it says Indians, therefore call them the white man's fly, and consider their approach as indicating the approach of the settlement of the whites. So essentially, like the Native Americans, they have these records that the bees would arrive and kind of were sort of the
harbingers of death.
Yes, essentially. So the white man's fly was like the bees show up and then they know that settlers are encroaching on the new territory. So I just thought, I mean, we're not going to really dive into that because that's like a social science podcast, but it's food for thought.
Do you discuss like the neonicotinoid herbicides or anything like that?
I didn't really get into it just because the colony collapse disorder, I feel like that's like a whole little thing on its own. We could maybe do a snip on it. I don't know.
We could do that. Yeah. I just kind of wanted to like highlight the fact that like certain herbicides like don't have the same, like not all herbicides have like the negative effects of like the bees can't find their way back to the hives and stuff like that. Like those negative effects and the ones that are like directly responsible for like colony collapsal disorder
Mhm.
and like the dislocation of bees and stuff, like that's the neonicotinoid herbicides.
Okay.
Like which for one, glyphosate is not actually a neonicotinoid herbicide. That's not to say that it doesn't have negative effects on bees and stuff like that, but it doesn't seem to have the same intensity of effects as other different pesticides.
Okay. That is neat. That's a whole nother thing with like our interaction with how we're controlling weeds and invasive plants and other things, and how that's affecting our livestock and ourselves and wildlife, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I'm going to go into some control methods because there was actually one case I could find where there was some eradication, so that's exciting. So most of the time, if you look up like eradicating honeybees, you're just going to get a bunch of pest control sites. So I had to do some digging, right, and check on some like academic sites and stuff. But there are places working on removing them, though we are mostly working on preserving them. #facepalm. So yes, because of the colony collapse disorder that we talked about. And yeah, we just need to diversify our pollinators. I think that's just like literally the easy answer. I know there's no easy straight answer in ecology, but if there were to be one, that would be it. So the example that came up for me was Santa Cruz Island off of California. This island is so cool. There are so many great stories here about the eradication of invasive species and like rehabilitating these islands back to their original state. I'm going to quickly plug, if you guys have never listened to the Wild podcast by Chris Morgan, there's a really cool one on the Santa Cruz Island fox. And it's this like really interesting ecological problem that they had there, and a whole bunch of like apparent competition and like things that were difficult to find out. Super cool. Check that one out. But anyway, so they eradicated honeybees off of here. So I couldn't find the full paper on this for the life of me, but I found the citation and the abstract of biological control and eradication of feral honeybee colonies on Santa Cruz Island, California. A summary. Wennerthorpe Barthel, 2005. Get lit. Okay. So they eradicated bees from the islands, and some of the methods they used is they mapped out all of these islands, and they actually used a parasitic mite as biological control, which is super cool. And then they kept an eye on it, and I'm pretty sure they used some manual removal as well, though I couldn't like dig right into it. And they found the last colony dead on March 31st, 2003. So this was actually quite a bit ago. And yeah, they said that they're no longer there. And I think this still stays true to this day because these islands are super well maintained, but it was cool.
That is cool, yeah. It's cool to see like specific things like that too, like biological control methods, especially in the United States, because like it's a huge landmass. And so like when you do those types of biological control and stuff like that, you never actually see like the full extent of their like abilities, because there's always limiting factors, and like reproduction rates usually exceed biological control methods. And reintroduction rates are really high for large areas and large land masses, obviously. So like an island is like a perfect place for restoration, because you can see like the actual effects and the after effects, which are right like one of the most important parts of biological control and just all control methods anyway, because you need to know what's going to happen after the pest is gone to fully understand how the control methods are working and what the implications of removing that pest are. So islands, like small places or small land masses where they do these active control methods, are an incredible place to study the viability of different control methods.
Yeah, it's cool. They're like, you hear people mention sort of that islands are like little laboratories, right? And it's kind of ironic because islands are so much more greatly impacted by introductions and, negative impacts from the outside. However, if you can do a proper eradication method, then it's also easier to maintain that afterwards. So, I mean, once we have to work at it and you have to keep at it, but something interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of the wrap up. I just wanted to give you guys like a super neat little summary about this issue and just get it out there so people know about it. Like, essentially the summary is like honeybees are like the high school jock who thinks everyone loves them, but they're just like causing more problems than good. They look cute, they have a nice butt, but we can really do without them, right? So Bee butts are adorable, though. Okay.
That was not the part I was concerned about in that statement. But go ahead, continue.
No, please do.
I was just wondering why you were checking out all the high school jocks' butts. I guess.
I mean, I wasn't too much.
I mean,
back
actually, you know
then.
what? Never mind. You know what? There was a reason.
It was my turn to be inappropriate, Nicholas.
We've switched roles this year.
Oh, new year, new me.
Yeah.
New year, less balls, more butts.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. New merch drop 2022.
Yeah, bee butts.
This is butts instead of balls.
Yeah. I mean, butts are great. Another plug, check out the Gluteology episode by Ali Ward in Ologies. It's great.
Another plug for butts in general.
Okay. That was not where I meant to go with that, but that worked out.
That's what I thought you were about to say. Like, okay. I mean, yeah, check out butts.
Do it.
Respectfully.
Always respectfully.
Yeah, I know you're wrapping it up and all, but like, I think a lot of the times too, people are like, well, what can I do? As like a listener and stuff like that,
Yes.
Which is something maybe we should include more, because obviously we can't be going out there and dropping a bunch of mites on everybody's honeybee
No,
populations.
please, for the love of God, do not.
You will probably end up in some sort of prison. What you could do is, when you're planting wildflowers, make sure you're planting native wildflowers, because a lot of wildflowers are like European wildflowers in those wildflower packs that they give out for free, which is only going to exacerbate the problem. If the only thing pollinating those are honeybees, then you're not giving any sort of food or habitat for the native species of bees, and you're just, amplifying the non-native populations. And yeah, I guess consider if you're concerned about this, I would say consider limiting your honey purchasing and intake and stuff like that, because supply and demand. If there's less demand for honey, then there's less reason to have the non-native bees and things like that. You got anything else to add to that?
Yeah. I was just going to say, I mean, and for anybody who doesn't know, like, reach out to your, native plant trust or your like local horticulture society or someone. Like, I know right now, I have a very like grassy lawn right now, and I'm like in the process of trying to go and like build a native garden, but I don't know enough about which native plants are here and that will also do well where I'm at. So I just recently reached out to someone, and I'm going to get somebody to come out and help me do the thing. Like, it's okay to not know or not know where to look or how to get started, but just reach out. And especially if you have a native plant trust or something in your area, in your region, they will be ecstatic to tell you what to plant where. So, I mean, and Googling it and stuff too, check it out. And yeah, we can just all do our part by having more native plants and helping to propagate our bees. Maybe a quick little note is, if you're want to build one of those little insect homes, this is kind of something that a lot of people have gotten into, doing like the insect hotels. Make sure you're careful about like where you get it or who you get it from, because sometimes people are buying these like cheap crappy ones, and it's actually like causing more harm than good, and killing like carpenter bees that like use the little hotels, and it's like, I don't know, painted with toxic stuff or whatever. So if you're going to do that, make sure you really do your research. The insect hotels are super cool, but you have to be careful about how you implement that. I can't tell you how, but I'm going to tell you to be careful and not just like buy a cheap one off Amazon.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with like anything, birdhouses, bat houses, and stuff like that. Always make sure you do your research in the proper species that you're trying to attract and house. And then also, obviously, like if you live in a homeowners association, those always have fun rules. Make sure you're abiding by all that kind of stuff. Not because I care about what the homeowners association thinks, but I don't want all your hard work to go to waste when they come over and say, oh, you can't have this because it's unsightly, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some cool ones out there, but yeah, make sure you check it all out first. Because sometimes like unfortunately, just good intentions sometimes don't go the right way. So yeah, I mean, save the bees needs to be a thing, but just not save the honeybees, and just, figure out, like, we just all need to do a little bit better to figure out what is helpful and what is not. A little bit of good news for the wrap up here. While I was reading through things, I read in a paper that the U.S. Department of Agriculture is working hard to understand and monitor native bee usefulness and how they can help implement that. I've attended a few workshops here in Ecuador focusing on native species. helping them thrive. You're seeing it more and more all over the place. So I don't want everybody to doom and gloom. I think we're heading the right direction. And we've seen that eradication methods work, and it was biological control, which is so cool to see because biological control is sketchy sometimes. But also check out, the Emerald Ash Borer episode with Becca. That was cool. And yeah, that's about it for me. And I hope everybody learned something. I hope you didn't unsubscribe. And we will head on to the debate round. We did not take a break again.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Less editing for me.
Sounds good. All right.
Thank you for joining us for the first half of this episode of the Anthropo Scene. We're going to take a short break.
The Anthropo Scene is an independent project by young ecologists hoping to educate and share interesting information about introduced species around the world. If you'd like to help us by sponsoring an episode, check out the links in the show notes. All right, Nicholas, what do you got for me? We've already debated a little bit and talked about it, but just to wrap this up.
Well, first things first, everyone who's noticed that we're transitioning into the debate round has noticed that I've come up with a new transition that isn't just an explosion with metal music behind it. For whatever reason, I created that monstrosity. In my mind, the debate round was going to be a much more heated thing, but it's usually us just like reiterating what we talked about in a very like kind and respectful way. So, but anyway, I kind of brought up a few points unintentionally, intentionally, but accidentally early. But essentially, just to like kind of recap on like what I was talking about before, European honeybees we use to produce honey, which is like a huge consumer product. On top of that, we utilize it for pollination, and arguably they are potentially offsetting the loss of native biodiversity that we have in our native pollinators. So is their presence something that we could consider necessary, both for all of those outlined reasons that I just mentioned?
Yeah, I think it's a yes and a no question or like answer. It's the same kind of thing when I talk to people about like eating red meat. It's not that I usually say like, hey, don't eat red meat ever, even though I don't anymore. But it's like we all just need to do less, and we need to learn how to live more sustainably and like back to the way we kind of used to do things. So it would just be ideally like a little bit less honey and making sure we really optimize the number of colonies that we're using for agriculture. But I think in some areas, especially where we're really seeing these like colony collapses, that we just need to put the resources and the money into figuring out how we can just get our native bees and other native pollinators that we haven't talked much about in this episode to pollinate our crops, because because it is symbiotic for us. Like it's or mutually beneficial, for everybody, because they get their honey and their their nectar and their pollen, and we get our stuff pollinated. So I think in some areas it is still a necessary presence, and I probably have a pretty hard time totally giving up honey, but again, it's just about moderation and us figuring out how to do it better. That's my answer.
Yep. I think that makes sense. And you always just keep in the back of your head, like we have a lot of bees here. I know in Illinois alone, like I said, we have 500 species, but the one thing that is true is that the European bees do not belong here.
Buzz.
Yeah, I could have had more puns, but
yeah, actually we did really drop the ball on that one, I think.
Yeah. Oh well. We'll comb through our puns next time.
Yes, we'll up the puns 200%.
Get it? Comb
I
through.
hope everybody enjoyed. Comb. I hope you got enough out of that. If you have questions, comments, like things you want us to talk about in a snip or something to elaborate on it some more, let us know. We love to hear from you on Instagram. We've had some people reach out and say how much they love the podcast, and it just fills our souls with joy. And especially Nicholas on a Friday that feels like a Monday when everything sucks. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And Nicholas, let's put on some Mamma Mia just to sign out here. Just kidding. The Honey song.
I've never seen that movie. I was like,
oh my
I'm
God.
definitely not getting some reference.
Oh,
well,
okay.
Anyway, Yeah, thank you guys for joining us for another episode and putting up with us for the last almost hour. And I guess we will see you next time when we talk about invasive carnivorous fish.
Ooh, spoiler alert. Exciting. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Anthropo Scene.
Be sure to follow us on all social media and feel free to reach out to us with any comments, corrections, or suggestions for future episodes or species you'd like to see us cover.